Crypto is in as crazy a spot as ever. But it's not only crypto that is worth talking about. For example, China apparently dumped $102 billion in US treasuries in 12 months as the Fed governor dismisses imminent demise of the US dollar. The reason I always bring things of this sort up is because you have to always remember why exactly this whole crypto space is interesting to begin with. Is because partially people want to get away from the US dollar. Partially, people want an asset class that can remain throughout time because, again, there's inflation, but only up to a certain point. In comparison to the US dollar, it's a pretty good inflation, dubbing it even kind of deflationary, I guess, over time because obviously it's scarce, which is another point, and most importantly, uncontrollable by a single entity, decentralized. And I mean, if you really start looking at the bottom layers of a lot of the economy, most of it is so dark, dumb, and outdated that it does make sense for a lot of these institutions to switch it up a little bit. And I guess that's also why a lot of companies, when they buy, they're not really too much looking to sell. They're mostly just in the accumulation phase. Earlier, I commented upon the fact that I think right now they're holding roughly 1 million Bitcoin in the Bitcoin spot ETFs. That number is drastically changing though. And Trump, BlackRock, and you can kind of go on with that list for a while. They've all changed their minds from being very much against crypto to being really progressive. At the exact same time, ladies and gentlemen, what we are also seeing is Bitcoin exchange balances declining to a apparent 5-year low. Major outflows from Binance and Coinbase signal long-term holding strategies because what you always see, right, is the more Bitcoin that is on these exchanges, the more hesitant you should be that they're going to sell it off. Because the moment they start taking it off, it means, hey, let's not leave our billions upon billions of dollars on these platforms, which are usually, I guess, the hottest point, the highest risk. Let's take it off. And they usually deposit it again when they're thinking of selling it. It's not fully direct, as in the moment they deposit, they might not sell straight away, but at least there are more plans to do so. And very often that is also when, if we see huge altcoin moves being, from an unknown address to an exchange, we consider that to be a sell-off. And that's usually when people get flagged as well, saying, hey, might be a massive sell-off for Shiba Inu, or hey, we're seeing some massive XRP being sent around. Again, for all of you that do not know, yesterday was again the first of the month, so 1 billion XRP got unlocked, 1 billion XRP got sent around, and it left many people afraid, many people speculating, many people scared, but it obviously happens the exact same way every single month. And I'd say that from almost any perspective, the more and more that things are shitty for XRP, the more and more it looks like this is finally the end. I mean, obviously you could have said that for like the last couple of months though, and you'd be wrong because XRP versus Bitcoin has just kept going down and down and down. But I must remind you that even though a couple months ago I said I've stopped buying XRP, I'm mostly just keeping the XRP I have and buying new altcoins that are more trendy because we're getting to a place in the bull market where that's the best thing to do. Honestly, the more that the XRP price bleeds, from a risk-reward perspective, the juicier it does get. But I'm a keep it a buck with y'all. I am mostly just interested in the grander picture here, right? Let me tell you two things. One, I personally think the massive crypto cycle is not fully in its peak phase, meaning if I'm being honest and open with you, what I think the best thing to do right now is just buy your major altcoins right now. Stay away from utility coins, stay away from all the lower ranked crap. And that's not because they won't make you the most of the gains. They will, right? The lower along the ranks you go, the more gains you'll make. Right now, I said this like for a while, but I'll keep repeating it. Meme coin's really hot. AI coins got a boost because of the NVIDIA announcement just now. RWA coins could do really well a little bit further into the cycle. People are betting on Ethereum parts, but it's just not as hot. Restaking, it was hot like 2 months ago. Right now, it's starting to fall off. Airdrops are cool, but again, not as amazing as before. I think it's more important to focus on the general picture of when is this cycle going to go from, oh, yeah, we're back at almost all-time high, we're falling, back at almost all-time high, falling, to just breaking through and going crazy. And I personally think a lot of this has to do with it, but perhaps not. I still think it's interesting to know because it's the underlying thesis of what we're doing and why we're buying, right? 517 billion in unrealized losses hit the US banking system as the FDIC warns 63 lenders on the brink of insolvency. For some reason, nobody's telling you this. And you might say, oh, but they don't want you to panic. I personally think if crazy shenanigans like this is going on, the people should know. But for some reason, news like this is always brushed off as if it means nothing. We're talking about $517 billion. This is not nothing. And I found this article almost nowhere. In its quarterly banking profile report, the FDIC says banks are now saddled with more than $500 billion in paper losses on their balance sheets due to largely to exposure to the residential real estate market. So basically, in the back end of things, it's really screwed up, but they're not telling you that. Now, unrealized losses represent the difference between the price banks paid for securities and the current market value on those assets. So in theory, things can get right because they're not realizing it. I'm just talking about the fact that the banking system people know and love and how a lot of these things work is really, really messed up because, again, this only becomes an issue when you need liquidity. So obviously, they're not going to tell. Okay, so let me do a step back. Although banks can hold securities until they mature without marking them to the market on their balance sheets, so not updating the price basically, unrealized losses can become an extreme liability when banks need liquidity. And that's basically along the lines of, let's say you put, okay, this is an example, a little bit aside, but let's say you put $1 in and you know, after 10 years, this will be worth $1.50, right? Let's just say it like that. It doesn't work, but as an example. In the middle, that dollar, if you want to cash out now, it's worth a little bit less than $1. It's like 93 cents or something. Well, so if you just wait another 7 years, you'll be fine. You know that, right? But if you want to cash out now, you only get 93 cents. That is not really an issue because you could just wait 7 years. Unless the moment it's worth 93 cents, the person that borrowed you $1 wants his $1 back. All of a sudden, boom, you got not enough money if everybody wants to do that. And we keep explaining how crypto just makes sense in a lot of different ways to prevent yourself from getting screwed over if things actually eventually do fall. And again, this is a little problem people often fall into when I talk to them about, well, let's say you cash out your crypto, right? Everything. I'm not talking about little bits because I understand that. I'm talking everything. Then what? They say, oh, I'm going to buy this and I'm going to buy that. And I always keep coming to the same point of what exactly is safe from nearly anything. If the internet goes out, even with your crypto, you're screwed. At that point, you might have better gotten yourself a farm with some things to defend the farm because obviously that's another issue. But I always like to think about what is inherently safe throughout almost any catastrophe. And at that point, you realize, no, nothing really is safe because you, theoretically speaking, are born with nothing and you'll end with absolutely nothing. Since you can't keep something, like you can't. But anyway, like one of the second best things, if we kind of skip the whole defending yourself stuff, well, a dollar piece of paper at that point definitely becomes kind of worthless. In a lot of instances, I'm talking about, let's say the stock market crashes, for example. So stocks, your investment portfolio, it's not so nice anymore. But at that point, if the US stock market crashes, the US dollar is going to have a big problem. People are going to definitely not like that. So if the US dollar is a problem, and you can kind of relate that, okay, so if the US dollar is a problem, what other currencies overseas are going to have a problem, and so forth and so on. And I always come back to the idea of Bitcoin is not safe. There's always bad parts to it. But neither is almost anything else you can think of here. Gold, people often like to say gold. In the reality of sorts, if there's an issue going on, people really don't want gold as much as you think because you can't eat it, nor is it really cool to have a shiny rock if you can't do too much with it. The only reason it's kind of usable and valuable is because if we relate it back, it's kind of hard to find and it's very shiny, but you can't say, oh, gold because it's really useful. Yeah, and like those microchips and little conductors of sorts. But how often have you okay, in food? Nowadays, what a stupid world we live in. One of the most useful ways I use gold besides computers is to eat. Now, anyway, the point I was trying to bring forward is that really, when I think about diversifying a portfolio, there are many good choices, but ultimately I always relate back to saying, all right, I always come back to saying, crypto really has a lot of pros when talking about proper diversification. And so getting away from this industry completely is not something I'm thinking about too often. People sometimes bring up, oh, but couldn't crypto die out? And I say, yes, it could. But so could almost anything else you're thinking of. And so I'll take my chance.